Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's event. I'm so excited to be with you. First of all, I wanted to say welcome to our guests. We are going to pass on the introductions in just a few seconds, but I wanted to say thank you to each one of you who joined. I'm Daniel Andono. I'm joining from my home in Medellin, Colombia, and I work at Acumen Academy as the Courses and Community Associate. And I have the pleasure to work with many incredible community members like you. I don't know if you noticed, but in your screen, you can see the chat section that some of you already are using. So if you can, please type in the chat, what's your name, where you're joining from, and any cool thing that you want to share with us or that you think might be relevant, either your work, you're interested, or anything at all. In my case, and just for the sake of this event, I'm saying that I'm joining with two dogs that are really active and they love to interrupt. So if you hear any noises, they might be the way of participating. I see we have people from Brazil, Pakistan, Ghana, Yemen, Indonesia, Mozambique, Colombia, Sierra Leone. Oh my God. Yeah. We have, people joining from the HCD Exchange community as well. So thank you so much, Mozambique, Vietnam. If I keep reading, I'm going to take all the time for this event, and that's not my intention. But anyway, thank you so much, and keep typing in the chat because we love to see where you're joining from. The topic that we're going to explore today, for me especially, is incredibly important and incredibly hard. As you know, starting a nonprofit, a social venture, or even a project, small or big, is really hard. For many, the biggest struggle is attracting the right kind of partners and reaching customers and beneficiaries who can benefit the most from your work. While having a strong professional connections can help you and all of us maximize our impact and reach, it is not easy to build, especially from scratch. That's why we have invited Wayne, founder of Thrive, and Daisy, co-founder of Brio, to share their first-hand experience starting their own organizations from ground zero and to help us navigate building up a network. However, before getting started, I want to run a few housekeeping items with you. So number one, this event will be recorded. So if by any chance your computer or internet crashes, you have a call, something happens, don't worry, we have you covered. We will be sending you the recording of this event in the next 3 to 4 hours. So don't worry about missing any detail because you will have access afterward. And two, you can use the chat in two ways, which is really cool and really easy for us to capture. So you can use the chat in the chat section to share with us any reflections you might have, or sharing with us where you're joining from, like people that already share like Oxford, Barcelona, also. But you can also use the chat for the Q&A only section. And that part is really important because in that section, I'm going to be reading all the questions that you might have. And at the end of the event, we are going to have a few minutes for us to explore some questions. As you know, we only have an hour, so we probably won't be able to explore all the questions that you might have. But the more questions we receive, the more patterns I can see, and the more we can cover in those last minutes in the event. So hopefully that's okay. That being said, let's get started. And first of all, again, Wayne and Daisy, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing with us all the incredible work that you do. So to start and to warm us up, can you tell us in simple terms, who are you? What's your role inside your organization? And what does the organization do? And Daisy, we can start with you.
Thanks so much, Daniel. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with all of you. And I appreciate that everyone here has something important and world-changing that they're working on. I'm Daisy. I'm the co-founder and executive director of Brio. We are a nonprofit based in the United States that partners with local organizations all over the world to develop contextualized mental health and well-being initiatives. And right now we have partnerships in Latin America and Asia and also in the United States.
Thank you so much,
Sure.
Daisy. Wayne, let's
Yeah,
quickly.
I'll go right into it. My name is Wayne Wright Akoy. I mostly called Wayne, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Tribe. And so formally, that's my title. But I like to say that my role in a Tribe is that I do everything, basically, at least for now. And I stopped using the title of founder, or just because Tribe has evolved over the last 3 years, from just an idea to an initial startup, and now we're trying to grow. And so we have more people on board now who are really taking the vision and the work forward. We are into full scale execution in this phase. And so I think at this point, I'm also hired to Tribe to make sure that we get the work going on. And so no more in the founder move, but more in terms of like execution more in the case. Well, what happened is that we are so across the African continent, less than 10% of high school graduates go to college, and what that means is that about 90% are going directly into the workforce. But high schools are not equipping young people with the kind of skills and tools that they need to get jobs or to go to college. And so it's a mismatch because if you're preparing people for college and they're not going to college, or at least not being equipped enough to survive in the workforce, then that's a challenge. And given the fact that youth population is rising by 2050, we're going to have the largest working age population. What that shows is that there is a massive opportunity to transform these people into productive employees or employers. Or if we can't equip them well enough, then we have a crisis at the same time. And so Trap sits at that intersection of saying, how do we equip high school students with the kind of skills and tools that they need to leave high school and already be equipped to either get a job, start a business, or just basically be able to thrive in the demanding ecosystem of the workforce.
That's incredible. Thank you so much, both of you, for
Thank
sharing
you.
with us what you do. And now I think let's start with, I don't know if in English this is correct to say that, with the meat, like with the substance of the talk. So now, could you tell us a little bit more about how you started your organization? How did you come up with the idea, and how do you make it a reality? Wayne, do you want to kick this question off?
Absolutely, absolutely. I've got to check the time to know how long I have to talk about this. So I think I just want to visualize the experience. I grew up in Liberia. I was born here, and in an underprivileged environment where you don't see a lot of successes. However, as kids, we will watch movies, we will watch soccer games, we will see documentaries or videos online, and you see these beautiful cities, you see the planes flying, you see people in mansions, you see rich people. And even though we were all very young, we were poor basically, but you could definitely see that we still had big aspirations and big dreams to one day be like people in the TV, in the movies. Um, but several years later, you realize that I've been blessed and fortunate to have realized some of these dreams. But not many young people have had the same opportunity because opportunity is really limited. And so you must have attained a certain level of exposure, privilege, in some sort. Go to a decent school enough to be exposed to this initiative. And so I think the idea was always, how do we really bridge the gap between privilege and opportunity? Because there are people who are born with these. There are people who just don't have to do a lot of work. But then there are many more other people who have to work 3, 4, 5 times as hard and still cannot benefit from the abundance of resources and blessings that are available in the world. And that really starts with by educating people, because when somebody's educated and exposed, they're empowered enough to be independent. And so that was always something I called our purpose for me personally, because I've really tried to do other things a lot of times, but I can't do anything as much as I do what I do with Try. And so that's essentially how the idea came about. But I'll talk subsequently in the next questions about how the process has evolved over time of really building Try from just an idea to really ensuring that we are building an institution that is actually creating some sort of lasting change and systems for young people in Liberia and across the continent.
Thank you so much, Wayne. Daisy.
Yeah, it's really inspiring to hear part of your founding story, Wayne.
Thank you.
So I grew up in the United States, and the reason we started Brio, my co-founder and I, was because we were working with community leaders who are based in Latin America for a number of different reasons. We knew them through personal networks, and one of the most incredible things I learned was the ways in which they were showing up for their communities, trying to address every single need. And one of those needs was around mental health and well-being. When we first started, I had a similar perspective on mental health to a lot of people, which is that it's about things that can go wrong, diagnoses, illnesses. But over the course of time, I realized that this topic is massive, and it's really about how do we relate with the positive and very challenging experiences that we have as human beings. And so as we were working with these community leaders, they knew that my partner was a mental health professional. And one of the things they said was, you know what, we're seeing mental health related challenges. We want to build skills. We want to see our communities be able to engage in their lives in a way that is meaningful to them. What can we do? And so that's essentially how we decided to start an organization that would partner with and truly accompany and follow the lead of local organizations, their vision for mental health and well-being, their community's desire for flourishing and freedom, and to work with them to design programs that would advance that vision.
Thank you so much, Stacey, and thank you so much, Wayne. Something that I really loved about any time that I have the opportunity to interact with entrepreneurs from, especially this network, Acumen and Acumen Academy, is how much of the human being is inside of those stories, but how how much of that human being expands to a community to truly capture what the problem really is telling you guys and how the solution is built. And I think for many of us, that's super inspiring. And yeah, I just love to hear that human part and that community part, that it's so valuable. And now something that I think for many of us who either are just starting an organization or a project, or are thinking about starting an organization or a project, is those first months and that first year of operations, of making that a reality. Thinking about those first months or that first year, that what did you do to expand your network? What good practices did you follow that allow you to survive that first critical year? Daisy, do you want to kick us off with this one?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the most important things about getting started talking about the work that you're doing and making connections is realizing that this is about being genuinely curious about other people. Luckily for me, I really find most people quite fascinating. I love hearing their stories, their experiences, just what is it like to be them. And in the really early stages, when we're all still trying to figure out, what is this thing? What is this thing that is emerging for us and for the people we're serving, the people we're working with? It's really important to build relationships that are open, that acknowledge that that's the journey. And so I would say when I first started, there were a lot of conversations around, hey, what are you doing? Why are you creating this? What are you trying to do here on my side? But there's always a mutuality. There's always a question back of what's emerging for you, what's happening in your life, what are things that you're sitting with right now that you are excited about, that you're worried about. And so entering into these conversations, just as two human beings coming together was a huge part of building trust and building a coalition of people that would be a part of our journey moving forward.
Thank you
This
so
is
much.
very amazing. Thank you. I think to answer that question, I just want to reemphasize. I'm answering the same question, Daniel. Is that correct? Yeah. I think I just want to reemphasize Daisy's point, because mental health as I knew it was not something I thought I related to as much until last year. It was during a very critical period of working with Tribe, being in school, and then having a job on the side. And there was this period where I crashed, and I just was burned out, and I realized that I wasn't taking enough care of myself. I wasn't being aware of my environment and everything else that was affecting me and contributing to the work I was doing. Then I realized that okay, there is a person inside of the robot that is always working that I need to pay more attention to. But then again, it was great because I had people who I could talk to and who could support me during that phase. Because I had a job, it was also really hard to say, "Hey, I'm not at my best at this point in time." And I'm known for okay, I work hard and I work more hours. So how can I take this always working self to say, "Hey, I just can't do this at this phase, at this period. I need help. I need support." It was really difficult, but it's because of the network of people I had to kind of talk to that really helped me navigate this phase. And so to answer the question, just transitioning back, initially it was hard because if you grew up in an environment where you don't see many of what you aspire to be, first and foremost, it's hard to aspire to be what you can't see. And so I was fortunate at a young age to be exposed to people who were doing amazing work, and they initially inspired my confidence and inspired my courage to want to be those things. And so ever since when I realized that, oh, I'm at a young age and I'm really exposed and I'm also learning a lot, my horizon has been expanded. But this is not unique for everybody. Not every young person has the same opportunity. And so I think from a very young age, I've always wanted to say, hey, how can we actually create more of these opportunities? I remember the first major event I went for. I was a Yali Regional Leadership Fellow in Ghana. I was there for a 1 month entrepreneurship training. When I got back, I went to the U.S. Embassy and I told the public affairs officer that, hey, I want to partner with the embassy to organize entrepreneur events. It was my first exposure to entrepreneurship, basically. For other young people, I had limited skills, and she said, "Yeah, why do you want to do this? How are you going to do this?" And I said, "Well, we can bring in people who are more experienced because I definitely feel like we were just, let's say about 4 or 5 Liberians at the training, which I thought was truly transformational. But I'm also aware that at least 150 young people applied for this opportunity. And so if we're only having 4 people going, what happens to all these other people who are staying? Like everybody is not going to have the same opportunities, which is why we have a responsibility when we benefit and achieve these things to go back and say how do we skill these same opportunities. And so that has been a burning passion. And so I said that's where my network started to build because I was engaging with people who had done things before and learning from them. And so I went from having an idea to seeking mentorship in the early stages of why I wanted to do my venture. Before launching, I had worked for a number of organizations and companies across different sectors just to build skills because I realized that what I want to do is not something like it's not a mind-blowing technology I'm creating. I'm not inventing a new scientific process or product. It's a work that requires hard work and skills and a lot of mental energy. And so the first thing is to really prepare myself mentally, intellectually, and to acquire the kind of skills that will help me to navigate this phase. And these have definitely proven worth it in this current phase of running Tribe because there are many things you can afford to hire somebody for, and so you have to do them yourself. You have to learn how to learn a number of things, which is really essential in the early stages. So yeah, I think to sum up, the question is just really learning, finding mentors, expanding the network, and as Daisy said, just treating everybody as humans, just being kind to people whenever you can, because these are the people that will root for you eventually when you need their support. And so I think just doing these without expectation that I want something. And one of the mistakes I think we make is that we make relationship transaction, right? And they shouldn't be. They should be, I think, natural processes. Eventually, there might be transactions. Eventually, we all might have something we want. But I think still putting aside all our needs and desires and saying that I'm going into this relationship because I value this person just as much as, I want them to value me and I respect them. I want to hear what they have to say. I value what they have, their story. It's really important to build a sort of authentic relationship that can subsequently really advance a lot more connections and possibilities.
Thank you so much, both of you. I think there's so many great things and good practices that I'm going to take with me, and I think that mantra of really seeking to build relationships based on openness and curiosity, and also using and like in trying to find mentors that can really challenge you to go beyond, it's are really good practices. And I think when something that you said, I think was, you didn't say these exact words, but I think where they were pretty much, the intention is it's never too late or too soon to start building your network. So don't be afraid of just starting. And as Daisy said, trying to find those mutualities to make that genuine and not just building relationships for the sake of building relationships. So thank you so much, both of them. I think the next question that I have for you, could be a, a little bit, has a lot to offer. So please take the time to explore your answers and to help us navigate this. So how did, like, this, all these good practices help you be more intentional in your fundraising efforts? Did this have any impact on the way you fundraise? And if it did, how? Wayne, do you want to start?
Sure. I think fundraising, I've learned, especially if you're not after VC funding, where you have to, prove a lot of concepts. I mean, even, the traditional fundraising still requires the proof concept, but it's more intentional, more storytelling, more impact driven. I think I've learned is a lot more about relationships, and that is something that's very key. And I learned this, early on. It's still a hard lesson that sometimes it takes a long while to really benefit from, these fundraising relationships. And that's because one thing that I try to remember now is that when I ask somebody for funding or I'm fundraising, the fact that I recognize that that person is financially capable to help me, I'm also cognizant of the fact that other people do also recognize that that person is also capable of financially supporting them. And so what that means is that I can feel entitled, but also build a relationship, and that person or institution has to be connected to what I do, has to have a personal interest in the work I have to do, and has to find likeness into my story and the impact that we are creating. And sometimes it takes a long time to build first trust, and then to also have the courage to say, I'm going to support, the work that you do. So I think just having that at the back of my mind helps me go into these conversations or relationships, knowing that there might be short-term investment or benefits might be, but also I'm looking more in terms of how do we build relationships. And I think another thing that comes in is that seeing these relationships are not only places where I can get money from, but other kinds of support. Maybe this person loves you, they like your work, they have money, but they can't support you, but they have other person who can, right? Or they can support you in other ways to be, your champion and your support. And so I think one of the major things I really leverage, early on, and I still do, is really finding people who support me because they just believe in me. Whether or not what I'm doing is crazy, it makes sense, it has an impact, but they just believe in you as a person because they know you can actually make whatever you do work. It's not about the idea, it's not about the project, it's not about the new model you're trying to launch, but it's because of you as a person, your story, what you do, and just being human. I think it's the most important thing as well. But early on in fundraising, it was really difficult because often people want to see what impact you created. Nowadays, the space is very saturated. It's not like 10, 15 years ago when not many people were into social enterprising or not many people were into impact driven work, where you can say, a lot more resources, a number of small initiatives doing that. But now, too many institutions, too many people are into the space for different reasons, good reasons, some bad reasons, we don't know. But you have to really prove and really demonstrate that my venture and myself deserve a space in the universe at this time. And to do that, I must be patient enough. I must really build the kind of relationships. I must do the work I need to do before I feel like I deserve a certain stake into whatever resources pour out into me and to my institution. And so I know those are a lot of theories, but I think just really remembering these things are key because a lot of fundraising, I say, is relationship building and just spending more time into doing that. Just one final story to close is that in 2020, we have been doing a lot of fundraising, but I hadn't been successful with my team and I over time. And so I thought, well, if I'm going to wait for somebody to invest into this venture before we do anything, maybe it's not going to happen. And so I remember I would use my own personal finances. So I was working a job in school and trying to build travel at the same time. So I use my personal finances to invest into initial work, right? We do some research and publish a report and say, hey, we did the research. You want to read the report? It's fine. Or we pilot our project. Hey, we did this project. Hey, would you like to read this report? And several years later, I realized that all those initial effort and dedication actually are now paying off in many ways that I can count. The second one is that we were into the Acumen Accelerator program in 2020, which Daisy was also part of the first cohort. And we were unsuccessful in actually getting funding in the accelerator program. And so I figured that, but my CEO and I said, well, we had learned a lot through the accelerator program. How do we leverage the insight and knowledge to, pivot our venture and sort of like build on with the feedback we got? And so we stay connected in the network, attending events. We took a lot of Acumen online courses. We built a lot of relationships with the network, just learning. I just intentionally learning, not that we weren't the funding, because we didn't think there would be another accelerator program, but how do we leverage other resources within the network and not just funding? And so last year, surprisingly, there was an Acumen fund, the Acumen Angels Fund put out, and we did apply. And 2 years later, we were able to get funding from Acumen that actually helped us to pilot our current program that we're running. So it just, sometimes it takes a lot of time, it takes investment, it takes being intentional, and just, I think, showing up every day, whether or not you're getting the results that you need in the immediate phase, is what I say.
Thank you so much, Wayne. Daisy, back to you.
Yeah, that's an incredible story, Wayne.
Thank you.
I think one of the first things that I've learned about having these conversations with people is whenever you start a conversation with someone, you realize you're actually entering into the middle of a conversation they're already having with themselves. And the way that they show up to that is in a context. It's in the context of their experiences, the things that are pressing on their lives right now, the pressures they're feeling. And so I think, again, creating a space when you're connecting with people where they feel held and not dominated, where they feel that, wow, like in this person's presence, I feel that there's somewhere I want to go. I want this to be a part of my life. I want this to be a part of my journey. Those are the best kinds of relationships to invite deeper engagement, because that person sees you and the work that you're doing as something that they can come home to. One of the things that really moved me once was we had a supporter who said, when I learned about what you were doing, I felt like I came home to something. And I had been looking for something like this my whole life. And this is it, and I think, it's hard to create that kind of magical experience for everybody. But I think that when you sort of step into the shoes of the other person that you're inviting into this project, this initiative that you're creating, that's the experience that is going to make them feel like they really want to come alongside. It removes the transaction. It's more of an invitation. It's more of this is how you can do more of, be more a part of this thing that you value, this thing that you've been looking for. Concretely, one of the things that I find really important, especially when people reach out to me for different kinds of support or mentorship, is just some basic knowledge about the person you're speaking to. It's kind of amazing. Like I've had some conversations with people who requested to speak with me, and they didn't know a single thing about me at all. And, I think when I reach out to people, I try to do the opposite. I do my research, I learn about their work. I find certain pieces of connection, and I'm ready to bring that into the conversation so they feel that they've come into a space where the person really values their time and their presence and the work that they've done. So doing the research, reaching out to people in a thoughtful way, and creating a conversation where they feel seen and feel like their input is valued is absolutely what should happen before asking them for financial resources. The other thing I'll say is that, there's a lot of self-evaluation that happens, right? I think a lot of us can feel small, powerless. We feel like we're under and those people are on top. And I want to first of all acknowledge that with the structures of capitalism that we have, systemic racism, oppression across the world, here in the United States, these power dynamics are real. And we all have to contend with them in different ways. And I think that it can also make us feel like we can never see the right thing. It can make us feel very kind of judgmental of ourselves. of, did I write the correct email? Did I use the wrong word? Did they not like my hair? All kinds of things that we can kind of get really kind of down on ourselves because we're in this process of trying to find our way. And so I would say that there's maybe a tension that we have to hold in acknowledging the power dynamics in our world that are absolutely unjust. And many of us are working actually to change that. And to say, when you're in a room with somebody, focusing on how small we feel, how unsure we are, is not really going to help engage that person. I think, learning to be a little bit more open with both ourselves and the other person can be really helpful, even in the presence of these very real power dynamics.
Thank you so much, Wayne and Daisy. I think there's a lot of important things you covered, and I think from really different angles that I think are really valuable and that I really want to highlight before moving on to the next question. I think, Wayne, from your experience, I think it's one of the things that I love the most about Acumen is how you exemplify this whole ethos of you have to be patient. I remember when in the accelerator you didn't get funding. Many of us, we were really, really sad because of that. But we like that engagement that you show and how you work towards your idea make you receive something equally as prestigious, equally as hard. And those first months that you invested your own money to make this happen really paid off in the long term. I think, as Daisy said, we always, when we are approaching people and we are using our network to find support for an idea, either as mentorship or funding itself. Daisy, I really loved what you said, that we always go to like we always enter in the middle of the conversation. And even when people have no idea about, let's say, healthcare or education or mental health, a lot of people, and I have to say myself included, we already have predispositions about these topics. We think that we have like a really clear idea about what people really need, and that's why like that humility and that friendliness and closeness when reaching to ask someone about joining you in your effort is really important, because you really want for them to feel part of that solution, that you're inviting them, that, as you said, like they're finding home in that idea. And I think that's really powerful. And finally, I think, Daisy, something that I really loved was how you address like the system in which we are, that it's different in every single country, that we share a lot of things thanks to capitalism in the West and many parts of the world, but also like how we need to be aware of what's going on to really try to find a path to make our idea and our efforts see the light. So thank you so much, both of you, for those reflections. And now, moving on, what are like the biggest mistakes you think people make when trying to start their own network? Or if you want to be more personal, what hard lessons did you learn along the way in your journey? Daisy, let's start with you.
Yeah, when I was thinking about this question, I was trying to select one. So there's many, and there continue to be. One of the things that is so hard when you are just getting started. So this idea is it's just in its early stages. There's a lot of hope. There's a lot of possibility, and you still need the time ahead of you to figure things out, to actually hit the road, so to speak. That's where you might run into some skeptics. In particular, there might be some folks who are like, ugh, that's never going to work. I ran into people like that all the time. Or do you really think, they'll speak to something that that really kind of gets at some of the uncertainty that you might already be feeling. And those conversations are really hard. I had a conversation once with somebody who, when I told them that I wanted to partner and truly partner with local organizations and follow their lead, this person said, "Oh, you can't trust people to do things right. You have to do it yourself." And I was sitting there in front of this person, just slack-jawed. I actually did not know what to say. She kind of struck at something that I held so dear, that was such a deep value of collaboration and trust, and all these things. And so I was actually quite upset, and did not really show it. But I think I walked away from that conversation thinking, this person is never going to support me. This person doesn't get it. This person has these particular beliefs, these mindsets, this attitude, and I judged them really hard. But then, I think what I've realized is, first of all, people can change their minds. We know that we do. And writing somebody off as either they get it or they don't get it is not always helpful. Sometimes the person, again, might have had an experience where they trusted somebody and that person betrayed their trust. It could be any reason that they said, "You know what, this is a terrible idea. I don't think you should do this." But I think to hold some of that with some flexibility. Sometimes somebody will say something and then they will come around several years later and say, "I love what you're doing." And to give them that opportunity is really, really important. So I would say one of the biggest mistakes I made when I started was running into a lot of skeptics, getting really frustrated, especially when they said things that went against my values and the things that I believed in. And thinking that they would never be champions for us. And I was wrong about that. And one of the things that's helpful for me now is, one, recognizing that people are full of contradictions, myself included. And some of this disorder is just part of the human experience. And so if we're willing to be a little bit more open about that, to recognize, okay, maybe this person needs to see things a little bit later, when I have some stories to tell them, and I'm going to go back and say, "Hey, would you be willing to get coffee with me again? I have some updates since the last time we chatted, and I'd love to have your thoughts." And they might actually be open to that. So writing people off was a big mistake, and I'd encourage everyone here to just hold the no's with a little bit more flexibility and understand that can change over time.
Thank you so much, Daisy. Wayne, over to you.
I think it's hard to come back after what Daisy just said. But I think a few things for me, I like to be more personal, in terms of mistakes I made. I think the first thing is, it's not personal. It's not about you when you're fundraising. And so people can say things about your venture or your idea. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're not. But I think it's not about you. And I had a good advice from a mentor and a big brother of mine who, was the executive director for my undergraduate program. And we had a conversation at some point. We were talking about failures and, whether, we're going to succeed or not. And after the session, he walked up to me, he said, "I believe in you, and I'm not going to promise you that Tribe is not going to fail. There's a high likelihood that it can fail as much as it can succeed. I'm not going to say that if you start another company, there's no way it can fail. These are all possibilities as much as they are also possible that they can succeed. What I'm going to tell you is that regardless of whether or not any of the ventures or companies or initiatives that you start fail or succeed, you're not a failure." And I think that really stuck with me. And I've taken that ever since years ago to say that I take that with me into the work I do, right? Because people have different experiences and backgrounds and perspective. And so you can't always just, make that to be personal and feel like it's the end of the world for you, or you're worthless because somebody has given a feedback about, your initiative. And I think holding that as like a North Star helps me to just be able to navigate these, fundraising conversations or just grant proposal writing because, okay, somebody likes it. Because you take an idea to somebody who said, this is great, it's amazing, I love it. And you take the same idea to another person who says, this is trash, I can't support it. And so if you're really putting down a logical framework, you understand that it's just all very personal to people and their opinions and their perspective. And so you can make that as the standard for how you're going about your venture. The second thing to back that up as is not listening to myself, and that's also important to get the feedback. I think every time I've not listened to myself, I've got into a big mistake or I've had a big problem because you can have all the expert advice, all the data and everything, but something is personal. The work that we do is deeply personal. If you're into the impact driven work, it is deeply, deeply personal. It's a purpose calling and purpose driven work that we do. And so it's really important to listen to yourself more often than not because it is that hard. It is that compassion that mostly drive the work we do, backed by the technical expertise or the logic that we have to use to be able to implement the work that we do. So I think just going to that is also important. Um, and then the third one is being overly ambitious. I am a super ambitious person. I'm not going to lie. And so right off the back, I was like, hey, we are sitting on the mine of opportunities and the world is just going to sing to us and we're going to dance to the drum and the rhythm. That was not the case. And so you go into these conversations, you apply for the grants, you meet people and they're like, nope, no, rejection, rejection, rejection. And you sit and say, what's going on, right? Is something wrong with me? Again, don't take it personal. But also just realizing that, okay, realistically, what do I really need to get this off the ground? So I think the first few months was just we built a huge budget of over 100,000, and then we had big plans, and we go out there super ambitious, which is good, but then that's not how the world receives what we have to offer. And so it took me several months with my team to say, hey, okay, let's sit down realistically and see what do we actually need to start. And we realized that we actually did start with just less than $500 with our venture. And so we did a pilot program with young people. We did a report, we did a study, which is small amounts. And we proved that, okay, we've seen something, we identified something that we want to expand. And so now let's take this initial successes or initial compliment to people to say, we have the passion, we have the skills, we have done something. Can you give us a little bit, just a little bit more so that we can actually expand it? And I think gradually that helps. In the process. And the final thing is being inauthentic. I think there are times I went to conversation just trying to fit into what people thought of what people perceive and what they wanted and not being my true authentic self. And ever since I've started to say to myself, I'm listening more and I'm going to be authentic wherever I am, it has definitely caused a lot of not getting funding or not getting support. But I don't leave that conversation feeling worthless or feeling like I've failed myself or my purpose. And I know that if you want to support our venture, you want to give us money or funding, you must be invested into the work we do. You must align with it. You must see that this has a purpose. This has an impact that I'm going to support. And so either way you go, if you're inauthentic, yeah, it could lend you, some funding. But then again, are your priorities aligned? Are you still staying with your mission, your purpose? How long can you sustain not being yourself because you need the funding to keep going? But even also the people you work with, they can see it, they know it, right? And so how long can they continue to support something that they don't see as real? For how long can that happen? And so really building these sustainable ventures, if you want to build something sustainable and more impactful, is really important to just be authentic in a way that actually align with the purpose. Because once there's a purpose that you stand for, I think it's always easy to have people who will truly genuinely support your mission, however you decide to go.
Thank you so much, Wayne and Daisy. I think those were really incredible advices, and like the mantra of always having this growth mindset about ourselves, but also the people that we want to partner with. I think it's really valuable. So thank you so much, both of you, for that. I have a final question, and I think many of people like me who love the social sector, but they're not like they don't know where to start and where to build a network. They might be thinking, okay, I'm not part of a big organization. I have no experience in fundraising, and my network is small. It might be small because I'm new in a country or a region, or because I changed careers. So the background I had in corporate law is no longer useful for a venture or an organization of agriculture. How do I start that network? And like in that line of thinking, what final piece of advice would you give to individuals, organizations that are just starting to raise funds, but their network is still small? If you can give us your 2 cents in 2 minutes, that will be great. Daisy, do you want to kick us up?
I'm going to make an attempt. I think one of the first action steps that can help is to volunteer. If you are in a place where you have a little bit of bandwidth and there's a local organization or a cause that has piqued your interest, and you're in that position where you're saying, this is so important to me, and yet I'm not sure I have the qualifications, I don't know the landscape, I've never worked in this, volunteer. I think there are a lot of local community organizations that would love to have you. They would love to have you along and have your support, and just slowly but surely, folks in that movement are sure to tell you their stories. And that's also a really good way to start looking into, okay, well, what does this ecosystem still need? What does it need from me? And whether that leads you to launching your own initiative or project or joining up in a more meaningful, committed way, that's a really good way sort of just to get some exposure and understand things a little bit, doing the work alongside folks who are already doing it. In terms of the broader piece of advice for getting started, I think one of the things that Wayne said really resonated with me, and that's sometimes you can't wait for the approval, especially when early on, when everybody kind of sees this as sort of a cloud in the sky, and they're not totally sure if what you're talking about is going to work. Sometimes you just have to get started, starting small, doing a little project, working with just one group of people. It doesn't have to be like some huge impressive number, just a few folks to build that momentum and to build that energy and to test out these ideas. It'll give you stories to tell. And so sometimes you have to take that first step and then invite people in once you've gotten going a little bit. Did we lose Wayne?
I think we lost Wayne for a moment, so let's not panic. And something really important is that, first of all, I really want to highlight what you shared. Like, just volunteering is such a really good way to get to know the ecosystem a little bit better and know where your energy will be best invested in that concrete moment of your life and career. And also, like, the whole just start and let the word teach you. I think it's really valuable as well. Wayne, I don't know if you can hear us. Maybe not. So we are going to use this remaining 10 minutes. And once Wayne comes back, we can have his wisdom in the QA section as well. We have 10 more minutes, and I think we can explore at least 2 of the many questions we received. Some of them, they were sent to me privately, so did my best to try to create a little bit of a roadmap. But one of the questions that people have really a lot of curiosity is related to mentorship, is how can you find a mentor? Because sometimes it's not easy. And especially once you leave school and a big organization, it becomes a little bit harder to find the right mentor. So Daisy, do you have any advice on how we can find mentorship in those stages?
Yes, and I acknowledge, again, it's one of those really challenging things sometimes, especially because there might be people who have lots of great experience, but that maybe they're not feeling like sharing it. And so, it's not just about finding that person who has maybe done some of the things that you're interested in, but also that person's willing to kind of be generous and build a relationship. And so I would say, first of all, there's there's the outreach to organizations that you care about, particularly in the nonprofit sector. I know that folks are calling in from all over the world, and so I'm speaking to the United States, and I recognize that my perspective is limited here. But I think that folks who are really passionate about this work frequently want to talk about it, even if they don't know that you're going to be a donor or that you're going to volunteer with them, but they love it so much. They're in the sector for a reason. And so finding folks, just calling them, emailing them, and just saying, hey, I'm really interested in the work that you have been doing. Would you take a few minutes to speak with me about that? Sometimes they'll want to talk to you again, and that is mentorship. Wayne is back. I'm so glad.
Yay. Wayne, we are so glad to have you back.
Yeah, sorry, I had some network issues.
No worries. We are now in the final Q&A section, and the idea is that I catalyze a few of the questions that I received in the chat, but also privately, and that I wanted to use your experience to explore some of them. So we already covered and explore a little bit more about mentorship, how to find mentors, especially when you're out of school or out of a big organization that can provide those to you. A question that I really love to explore with you, Wayne, is after you first meet a possible donor or a possible partner for your organization, how you maintain a good relationship with them in the long term. How can I go from date to marriage and with this kind of partnership?
I think it's really different for different people. It depends largely on where you're at the moment, who the person is, what alignment exists. I think in my case, what has worked is that I just walk up and say, hey, But I think the easy stress on this early on in talking about really knowing who you're trying to connect with. Sometimes they just know nothing and have no connection, but they just want a mentor or they just want to connect because maybe it's a standard practice. But really knowing who you're talking to and what value can that person add to you, it's really important. But even more important is that it's a two-way relationship. It's not just them giving to you; it's what value can you add to that person as well. Because if somebody's going to take their time to invest into you, that means they expect that you will value, you respect and value their time. You're going to take what they're teaching you and utilize that in the best way possible and actually deliver results from that process. And so I think people sometimes don't understand that it's a two-way relationship and they just go in with that, okay, I'm just going to take from this person without thinking about how can I also add value to the person as well. So I think that's the first phase of really understanding where is alignment and what is the value that we both can actually generate from this relationship. And the second thing is just showing up, be present and just ask. There's nothing wrong with just asking, hey, I followed your work. I know you do this and this is what I aspire to do, or this is what I currently do. And I'd like you to support. And I think just a couple of minutes we talk about, how not to take it personal or sort of, I guess, divorcing yourself from that experience. And also knowing that if somebody isn't in the space to do that now, it's not personal. People have lives just as much as you think this person can be my mentor. That's how a lot of other people also do think that this person can be my mentor. And so it's always about really finding the priority and saying who can I actually invest my time and resources in that best align with me at the moment. So I think that's just the first advice I have for people looking for mentors.
Thank you so much, Wayne. And I think a final question. We have only around 2 more minutes. So this is a challenge, but I really wanted to explore this one, and is how can you leverage your network to get a little bit more exposure of the work you're doing? So if you have any advice on this topic, feel free to either of you jump in and help us explore this topic.
I think Daisy has done great with that, so I'll let her go first.
Well, I was just thinking what one concrete thing that can be really helpful is if you say you have like 2 to 3 people who are big fans of you, have been following you since day one, and they know the ins and outs of your journey. creating some kind of gathering. It could be online. It could just be sort of a listen and learn kind of event where you invite them to invite a couple more people to come and to experience, to have conversations around the issues that you're working on. That's one concrete thing, and it works well for a lot of people.
Yeah. Can you just repeat the question again so I have my thoughts together?
Yeah, no worries. The question is, how can we use our network to leverage our exposure, like to show more people the work we're doing?
Yeah, I think it's really important to, I guess, categorize the people in your network. There's some people who are, people who will support you, like I said, no matter what. They're there to be your champions or your ambassadors. There are people who will be there to give you technical skills. There are people who will be there to recommend you. So you have to really understand who's on your team. I think having a close team with people who. So I actually thought about this a couple of minutes ago. So I have one person, and he quite doesn't know that this is the role he has. When I was still in college and I was working on Tribe, I had a call with him one time, and he gave me some really critical advice and feedback that it left me feeling like it left me empty. I had no idea what I was going to do after that period. But I had to take a couple of days to sort of like realize, okay, he actually means well, but he wants the best to come out of this process. And to be honest, if I actually want to be an entrepreneur, I must take this feedback very seriously because I can't say, oh, somebody says, I don't think this is ready, and I feel like, oh, he doesn't like me or support me, or this is never going to work. But just really saying what value in that feedback is important. And so we talk maybe like a year, one or two times every year, and every time we speak, the feedback actually has been thinking for like a couple of days just to think about what am I actually doing? Am I really looking at the bigger picture? Am I considering all the real important factors that I need to consider? And so I think that has been his role for me over the last 3 years, which he doesn't know. But we just have a regular catch-up call and check in, and I say updates, and he gives feedback, and that's it. And after that, I have to really consider that really strongly. So I think really putting people into categories and knowing who will just support you whenever you need them to support you, because also there is a mutual benefit in relationship and respect that, but also who can give you critical advice, who will look at you and say, I think this is nonsense, you have to change it. And somebody who will just, be there to say, well, whatever you need, I'm going to give it to you, or whatever you need me to recommend you for, I'm going to be there to do. So just understanding the different people on your team and their role is very important in leveraging the network and utilizing it for the best as you can.
Well, thank you so much, both of you. I know there's a lot of more questions that we want to explore, but sadly, because of time, it's difficult. However, before saying goodbye, I want to send 2 reminders for all of us. Number one, in the next couple of hours, between I think 3 to 4 hours, you will receive an email with the recording of this event. In that email, you will also find the link to access our Slack community. That's an incredible space for you to explore questions that you might not have the opportunity to explore here, and to share resources and good practices with other people to keep your learning journey going. So that's number one. Number two, you will see in the chat that, let me mark this as highlighted. Your feedback is for us crucial, and we want to keep developing these events for you, but we really want to learn as well. So please take just 2 minutes to complete this survey and help us learn a little bit more. How can we make this better for you, and what kind of questions and topics and things you think we could cover a little bit longer? That being said, Wayne, Daisy, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you have a lot of things on your plate, so thank you. And to all the people who joined today, thank you so much. We are here for you, so glad to know that we were able to get you the chance to get to know the experience of both Wayne and Daisy. Have an incredible rest of your week, and we'll see you around. Bye, guys.
Thank you so much, Dave. Okay.
Thank you. Bye.